Hey Archery Talk, this is Lucas, and today I've got my long-term review of the Mathews V3 31. This bow is the next evolution for Mathews in their hunting bow lineup, and it's got a few key changes that we didn't see in prior years. We'll get to those in just a little while, but first let's take a look at the specs. As you might expect by the name, the V3 31 has an axle-to-axle length of 31 inches. It also has a brace height of 6 inches and an IBO rated speed of 340 feet per second. My bow came from the factory with 85% let-off mods, although 80% let-off is available if you choose to go down that route. It also carries an MSRP of about $1,100. That's what I've been seeing for online, which kind of puts it right around the middle of what we're seeing for our hunting bows for 2021. So what's new for 2021 in part is an extended bridge riser. Mathews calls this their longest riser to axle ratio they've ever produced. And you know, I've held this next to a VXR 31.5 from last year, and you can definitely see there is a slight increase in the riser length versus those bows, but I would call it fairly moderate. You know, I don't think most people are going to notice it without a back-to-back comparison. Also new this year, and probably the biggest visible change, is the way their cable guard system works this year. No longer coming out 90 degrees or perpendicular to a bow like every other cable guard we've ever tried. This one kind of comes down at an angle, but the difference is the rollers are exactly at the center point of the bow. And what helps here for me is that it gave me a great spot to just make my knocking point. So I laid an arrow flat on the rest and made sure it was running right through the middle of the roller guard, and it ended up giving me a great spot to tune the bow from. Finally, Mathews introduced a new Nano 740 dampener for even better kind of noise and vibration dampening, and we'll get to that in just a little bit, but it's fairly surprising. Now let's get to the actual review, and we're going to start with draw cycle. This bow actually feels like a bit of a departure for Mathews compared to at least ones I've tried in recent years. In the last couple of years with the VXR and the Vertix before it, which might be my favorite hunting bow ever, the draw was a little on the stiff side, but super linear and smooth, zero hump into the valley. This one feels actually insanely light when you draw it. I've got this thing set up at 70 pounds, and I would never ever think it was that heavy if you were just drawing that back on its own. It feels wildly light. The only difference being there's a fairly pronounced dip into the valley, which is unusual for Mathews bows, especially with this CrossCentric cam system that I've tried in recent years. I'm not sure if everyone else is getting that same feel on the draw cycle. It might change for different draw lengths or whatever you have you, but it was a bit of a surprise this year. Again, I love how light it feels. I just don't love the little dip into the valley. I like a kind of a smooth linear pull where it kind of lets me kind of concentrate on what I'm looking at and not how the bow feels. Now, once you get to full draw, you're going to be met with cable stops, which I've always been a big fan of how Mathews has the cable stops feel. There's just the tiniest little bit of give when you get to the wall, which is exactly what I'm looking for. I always shoot a hinge release for everything, and having a little bit of give just helps me kind of pull through the shot a little bit better. You know, I know some folks prefer that rock hard wall that you get from limb stops. That's not me. If that's your thing, there's lots of other options out there for you. I just really like how this particular setup feels. And where the V3 31 really shines is how it holds at full draw. I have not really spent any time with an actual stabilizer on this bow. I love how this thing shoots without a stab on it at all. I would happily take this into the woods and hunt with it with no stabilizer. I've done that with my Vertix in the prior years. This thing just flat out holds on target. I don't know what the magic formula is, but I really love how this thing shoots. It's a great long range shooter up to 70 plus yards at my club where I've had a chance to shoot this thing. It feels every bit as good as any other hunting bow longer that I've tried over the last few years. Now, I hinted about this earlier, but the area where this bow outshines everybody else that I've ever tried is the feel after the shot. You know, the Vertix, the Triax, the VXRs were all shockingly quiet and vibration-free after the shot, and I really think this takes things somehow to another level. Like I shot all these bows that I've got this year back to back to back to back to see how everything sounds and feels and shoots, and it's such a noticeable difference, this bow, from everything else I've shot. It is shockingly quiet. I don't know what they do. I don't know what sort of spells they cast in the Mathews factory, but whatever they're doing, I hope they don't stop. A bow review wouldn't be complete without a speed test, so I ran the V3 31 through the chronograph. I set this bow up with 70 pounds of draw weight and 30¼ inches of draw length, and I shot a 350 grain arrow, an average of 328 feet per second. I also shot a 477 grain arrow, an average of 285 feet per second. That ended up being basically tied for the top amongst all the hunting bows I tested this year. A little lower than its advertised speed, that's, you know, I've come to expect that from most manufacturers in recent years. Fit and finish on the V331 is typical Mathews. Again, I've always loved the look of the long risers. You know, the TRX38 I found is a beautiful looking target bow, and the Vertix and everything else. I just love that long riser design, and I like most of the manufacturers who go that route. This thing looks great. I love this green color they've given us this year. It's the same one we shot last year on the VXR, I believe, and it looks great in person. I love a solid color bow, as you may have heard in previous videos over the years. So again, Mathews doesn't disappoint when it comes to fit and finish, and that's what you would hope for out of any flagship level bow. The bottom line is, if you were looking for a bow that is ridiculously quiet, almost unfathomably quiet after the shot, and holds like a rock, go check out your local Mathews dealer and try the V331 for yourself.